Hello and welcome to the Trust Professional Podcast, provided by the New York State Society of Certified Public Accountants. I am Calvin Harris Jr., a CPA and Chief Executive Officer of the Society, and I am your host. This is a podcast provided by NYCPA, where I interview leaders in the accounting profession in New York and beyond, as well as those who influence this space. We help you connect, learn, and lead within the accounting profession. In this episode, we present an interview with Liren Wei, CPA, the immediate past board president of the New York State Society and managing partner of Wei Company, LLP, in Flushing, New York, which happens to be the largest Chinese-American-owned accounting firm in the United States. But before we get to Liren, let's discuss our news of the day. First, I'd like to highlight the work of our 14 chapters doing amazing events and work in local areas and cities throughout New York State. At the time of this recording, during the week of Monday, September 16th, we have the Suffolk and Nassau chapters' 12th annual supersized networking event on Thursday, September the 19th, where our chapters in Long Island, along with various colleagues in the community, come together for an event that is supersized, one of the largest networking events of the year. Also this week, on Friday, September 20th, our Mid-Hudson chapter has a murder mystery dinner show. These and other events, not just this week, but throughout the year, can be found on the event calendar at the nysscpa.org website. We hope to see you soon at one of these social networking events, as well as our continuing education events, such as our ethics update seminars, also happening throughout the states, as CPAs here in New York obtain these classes needed to maintain our CPA license. Much like the networking events I mentioned earlier, you can find information on the ethics seminars as well as all of our training and continuing education seminars on the event calendar on the NYCPA website. NYCPA helps you connect, learn, and lead. Now to some news outside of the Society. First, via the Accounting Today with Michael Kahn, the author, state societies highlight top skills for chief financial officers. The Massachusetts Society of CPAs, in partnership with the Indiana Society of CPAs, the Tennessee Society of CPAs, and CPA Crossings, released a report this month highlighting the skills and competencies deemed essential for aspiring CFOs to succeed in today's competitive business landscape. The 2024 Corporate Finance Report, called CPAs in the C-Suite, Most Wanted Competencies for Finance Leaders, is based on a survey of more than 320 hiring executives, including CEOs, Chief Human Resource Officers, and executive recruiters. The survey assessed 8 major skill categories and over 80 specific sub-competencies, offering a detailed review of what hiring managers value most in CPA candidates. Some of the main highlights touched on the evolving CPA roles for CFOs, future-focused financial acumen and the need for it, leadership and strategic excellence, the importance of emotional intelligence, also an industry-specific expertise. To quote my colleague, Mass CPA President and CEO Zach Dona, the landscape for CFO roles has evolved significantly in recent years. Our report provides valuable insights for CPAs who are aspiring to take on top leadership positions. By understanding the key competencies that hiring managers are seeking, CPAs can better position themselves for success. So kudos to our colleagues in Massachusetts, Indiana, as well as CPA Crossings for this exceptional report. As a former CFO myself, I can attest, no pun intended, on how important those skills are. Also, apologies for leaving out the Tennessee Society of CPAs. Kudos to our colleagues and CPA Crossings for this exceptional report. Also via Accounting Today, there's an article on best practices for recruiting college students. So at a time when we're constantly talking about the pipeline challenges, the need to get more students and younger people interested in accounting, we have some best practices via Accounting Today. As noted by the article, the relationships between firms and colleges to recruit talent to a profession with diminishing pipeline has never been more important, as fewer students are studying accounting and even fewer are going on to their CPA license. Some of the highlights they point out is, first, to start recruiting efforts earlier. While college juniors and seniors are typically identified as ideal intern candidates, firms should not underestimate the importance of planting the seed with younger students. As it turns out, even in recent podcast interviews, we talked about how important it is to engage students even before college, let alone the junior and senior year, into high school and even middle school. So kudos for Accounting Today for that article. Last article from Accounting Today, which obviously is such a great source of information, we have the SEC approving the PCAOB Quality Control Standard. Also, as I said, from Accounting Today, the Security and Exchange Commission, or SEC, approved the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, or PCAOB, new quality control standard. And that happened earlier this month in September. QC 1000, a firm's system of quality control, as it's titled, will require all registered public accounting firms to identify specific risks to their practice and design a quality control system that can safeguard against those risks. You can see more information about these and admittedly the prior two articles on the Accounting Today website. Lastly, as reported by many news outlets, including, as you might guess, Accounting Today, big news as both the AICPA and NASBA propose an alternative to 150 hours for licensing. The American Institute of CPAs, or AICPA, and the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, or NASBA, have proposed an alternative pathway to CPA licensure. Instead of completing 150 credit hours, the CPA competency-based experience pathway, as it's called, would enable candidates with a bachelor's degree who met their state's requirements for accounting and business courses to obtain their CPA by demonstrating their professional and technical skills. The proposed competency framework will require candidates to meet 7 professional competencies, which include ethical behavior, critical thinking and professional skepticism, communication, collaboration, teamwork and leadership, self-management and continuous learning, business acumen, and technology mindset, as well as 3 technical competencies, which are tax, business and financial reporting, and audit and assurance. Those candidates would be verified in the candidate's workplace by licensed CPAs. You can see this information on many news outlets, but as I said, also Accounting Today, one of our favorite sources of great information. This information has been proposed, so it is currently in the discussion phase where stakeholders are able to make comment. Please stand by as NYCPA will very likely provide comment on this groundbreaking proposal. So much more to come as we move along. That is our news of the day. And let's shift over now to our interview with Liren Wei. Okay, I'm really pleased to welcome to the Trust Professional Podcast, Liren Wei of Wei and Company. Liren actually began his accounting career roughly 30 years ago as a staff accountant at Wei Company. Now he is the managing partner in charge of overall management and administration of the firm. That includes directing the activities of managerial, professional, and support staff, as well as coordinating all of the resources around the firm. His professional affiliations are numerous, including a member of the AICPA. More importantly, with the New York State Society of CPAs, he is the immediate past president of the society, but has also served in numerous roles, including the peer review committee, where he was a chair, as well as our committee for government accounting and auditing, the stock broker-dealer committee. Now, chapter-wise, he's also been extremely active with our Queens Brooklyn chapter, where he was the president there, but that was after also serving as vice president and director as well. He is extremely active in his community, and I can tell you from personal experience, he is truly committed to the profession and moving things forward in New York and beyond. So, Liren, thank you for joining me today on the podcast. How are you doing?
Very good, Calvin. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm actually going to jump right into it because I've certainly heard your story before, and I think it's going to be really great for people to hear it. So if you could, let's just start with your journey into the field of accounting. And, this being a podcast, you can take as long as you need, but what's your journey to this point?
That's always an interesting question. So where do I begin? During our 2023 annual election dinner and meeting, I actually share a similar story regarding my journey. So my journey into the field of accounting is not a typical journey, since I originally was on a different path. I came to the US when I was around 7 from Taiwan. I was not your typical were stereotypical Asian students with excellent grades and music mastery over piano or violin. That would better describe my son, not me.
Right.
Yes. My grades during my early education, all the way through high school, were quite mediocre. And that's same for my SAT scores. They were really, truly mediocre. I did, however, have stereotypical Asian parents. They had very high expectations and thought that a medical profession would provide for a good and stable financial future. So, upon graduating from high school, off I go back to Taiwan. I was enrolled in a program, a dental program. It was a combined 6-year undergraduate and graduate program at the Taipei Medical University. Chugging along, grades were terrible again. In my 6th year, I realized that for the rest of my would-be professional career as a dentist, I would be working daily in about 50 square inches of oral cavity and 32 teeth. So you see, dentistry was my parents' vision of my future, and it wasn't mine. Dentistry was really not for me, so I broke the news to my parents during a summer break on a trip back to New York. So my dumbfounded parents really couldn't believe it. The only things that they were able to say was, I mean, really, after 6 years, and you could not have told us a little bit earlier. So my parents had already spent a small fortune on my education. At that point, I knew that I was on my own. And this time, it was my own vision for the future. So I returned to the US and quickly enrolled in Baruch College. CUNY was affordable to me, and I had already decided on my major, which was going to be accounting. So the truth is, I was not a stranger to accounting. My father was a CPA. He started his practice from the basement of our home. While I was in high school, I used to work for him a couple of hours here and there part-time, preparing payroll taxes, sales taxes, and simple individual tax returns in order to earn a few extra dollars. So at that point, with really no time to waste, I was very focused. I was very motivated. I needed to be done with school. I had spent 6 years in a dental program and another 4 that was coming in accounting. So between the two, I would have spent,
Wow.
Yes, between the two, I would have spent enough time to be a PhD. So I really needed, right? So I really needed to speed things up. I took as many courses I could, and that was allowed. And of course, work part-time paying the bills. The hard work paid off. I graduated summa cum laude and on time.
Wow. From mediocre grades to summa cum laude. So it just needed a better fit. It sounds like, yeah.
So it was definitely a better fit. And
yeah,
I was very serious at that point. No more horsing around, no more poor grades.
Yeah.
Now, while it seemed like the hard work paid off, the hard work didn't really pay off in the way that was most important to me at the time, which was to land a job, the dream job at the Big 8.
Sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get a job. I interviewed. I even had second interviews. So not having an offer with a very high degree of disappointment, I went to my dad and asked for a job. And what could dad say? He's not going to turn down his son, right? So I took on a job with my father's firm, and who would have known then that 8-person firm that I joined back then today would become the largest Chinese-owned firm in the U.S., and I will become its managing partner. So that's my journey.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So, well, clearly with 10 years of education, you would easily pass the 150 credit credit hour requirement. And this is always a reminder of, given all the dental work I've done, I'm going to probably not smile around you, but so much for fear of judgment. But that's really amazing, though. 6 years. So wait, at 6 years, is that a point where I don't know dentistry terribly well? Well, I mean, clearly, given all the dental work, but after 6 years, is there like a residency like you would do with other type of medical fields, or what would have been next? Because it seemed like you were pretty close to the end to being a dentist at that point.
Well, truth be told, I did fail a couple of courses, so I wasn't exactly at the end.
Well, you did say mediocre students, so they.
But you're right. You're right. There is a 1 year. It's like an internship or residency that you need to do for that 1 year so that you can put theory into practice.
But that shows a definite commitment to hard work and to sticking with it, because I got to admit, I don't know too many people who after 6 years in school, irrespective of grades, would sign up for another 4 years in a new career. So that shows the commitment. But I think the proof of concept is clear that it was the right call. But I'm willing to bet there aren't too many people listening that can name another person that was essentially in dental school and then shifted over, not even towards the beginning, but at a pretty significant place. So that is amazing and definitely unique. And see, I would imagine, though, with all you've seen, particularly in essentially growing up as an accountant at your firm, you have definite thoughts. So, from your vantage point, and even as a immediate past president of the society, what do you see as our challenges right now, or a challenger that you see within the profession?
So I believe it's been said over and over again, and perhaps your other guests have already mentioned something similar, but we do continue to struggle with the aging CPA population and the insufficient number of college and university graduates entering our profession. So the younger generation may perceive accounting as uninteresting or just plain old boring. So, in my mind, there's really nothing uninteresting about accounting or the people in our profession. They just need to understand better, and maybe we've not promoted and marketed our profession well enough, so they fail to realize how diverse our profession really is. I mean, just look at the number of committees or specialized groups that we have at the state society.
Right, over 60, yeah.
Over 60, right. And they range from the more traditional, such as auditing and tax, to the very progressive, such as cannabis, crypto, or digital assets, and sustainability. And look at the people with accounting backgrounds leading lives that are exciting and fascinating. I don't know if you know this, but did you know that Mick Jagger, Kenny G, and Janet Jackson studied to become accountants in college?
Janet Jackson, I knew, because this won't surprise you, Liren, that I was at an event just last night, and someone mentioned this in passing, and I'm like, this is the sort of thing that CPAs would love. Now, I think in Janet's case, she made, actually, I think in all cases, they made good decisions. I did not know about Mick Jagger or Kenny G. Those two I did not know at all.
And the surprise is...
They had the same careers too.
Absolutely. And the surprise is Mick Jagger and Kenny G both were awarded degrees in accounting. Janet Jackson, I believe she stopped in order to pursue her musical career.
Yeah, she's a Jackson, so I guess her path was laid out. So I didn't know they had degrees in accounting. I do have one. I'll throw one in that I just found out recently. Unfortunately, I found out because he passed away recently. Bob Newhart. Although the way someone told it to me is that Bob Newhart, the amazing comedian, 2 shows named after him, if I'm not mistaken, she called him a failed accountant. So I don't know. So if that's true, no disrespect to Bob Newhart, may he rest in peace. But certainly a great comedian, great actor, but a supposedly a failed accountant.
There are other interesting people in accounting. How about John D. Rockefeller? He started as a bookkeeper becoming an accountant before you became one of the richest men in the history.
That's right. I forgot about that. Now, I forgot about him. That one I think I knew, but I've forgotten.
And similarly, J.P. Morgan was an accountant on Wall Street before becoming like a banking giant.
Okay. Didn't know that. Well, gosh, now I feel like I need to I feel like I need to brush up on my history now, because those two, in retrospect, J.P. Morgan and John D. Rockefeller, those are both pretty obvious ones now that you say it. But I got to admit, I didn't know. So maybe they were obvious to everyone else. But to your point, though, I mean, whether it's, the people that we didn't realize were accountants, it sounds like a lot of it still comes down to the younger generation and helping them be more engaged. A little shameless plug for the podcast. I had recently gotten a message from one of our members, one of our younger members. She talked about how she had enjoyed the podcast interview so far, and it mentioned that she wished she had heard some people like this when she was in high school. Fortunately, she became a CPA anyway, so we didn't lose her. But she was expressing how important it would have been for her early on to hear some good stories about accountants, particularly those who had a non-traditional path. That's certainly one of our goals here, is to put interesting people out there and help others see that accounting can be interesting, accounting can be fun, accounting can be cool. I'm biased, CPA also, but I don't think we're wrong. What's something, that about CPAs or accounting in general that you think a lot of people get wrong or get wrong about us?
There is a misconception about accounting. And the view is that what we do is uninteresting. And there's really nothing uninteresting about accounting or the people or our profession. So we all have interesting lives within and outside the profession. I mean, how many professions allow you to travel all over the country and around the world? I mean, it's possible in our profession. We don't all need to sit in the office. So, for example, the professionals at our firm have traveled all over the US and internationally to Australia, Europe, and Asia on client assignments. So how many professions can say that? And how many professions have a path to becoming leaders of the biggest companies in the world? I think it was the Journal of Accountancy in 2023. They had a survey and they published 38.5% of the CFOs of companies that comprise the Fortune 500 and the S&P 500 were CPAs. And the same study showed that nearly 8.5% of the CEO vacancies in those companies were then subsequently filled by CFOs. A different study by Forbes showed that about 11% of Fortune 100 CEOs have backgrounds in accounting.
Really? I didn't know it was that high.
And our State Society CEO, Calvin Harris, is a CPA.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't count in that study, but
right.
maybe we'll one day get that big that will be Fortune 100. That's amazing, though, that there's that many in those roles. Now, I will admit, and I'm not sure I've mentioned this to you before Liren, but, when I decided, told many times how early I decided I wanted to be in accounting and CPA. But I will admit, one of the things that caught my attention was something I read. I'm not sure how young I was. It was at least high school, but it honestly might have been middle school. But I read something saying that being an accountant was a great path to being in charge of an organization. So I will admit, for me, even beyond the set, it certainly made an impact on me in thinking about what I wanted to do on there. I think you're right. First, I didn't realize the numbers were that high. Interestingly, I think that also, funny enough, presents very interesting and high possibilities for organizations like ours in terms of, the number of folks we can engage with, because you can make a case, particularly when studying. Now, somebody say, okay, that's, it's 10%, but that's a lot, particularly in a place, 11%, right? That's a lot in a place particularly in a place like New York, with the size of companies and firms that we have here. It would suggest that even outside of areas like public accounting, there's a great opportunity for organizations to look to associations and societies like ours here in New York and elsewhere for all of their leaders, not just their accounting leaders. I didn't know either of those studies, so I am absolutely going to be stealing those figures for future comments, because I think it's important for people to know so much more that we can do.
The misconception is not only do we have boring lives within the profession? But, we actually have people who have very interesting lives outside the profession as well. So I've met State Society members who are still very competitive. They're competitive athletes, and they compete in triathlons. We have Calvin Harris running marathons.
I run them. I do run them. I run them quite slowly. But I will say, to that point in terms of interesting things, we just had a conversation with Michael Durant, one of our podcast guests, podcast number 3, I believe. He was making the case for why it made sense for someone who likes to run a marathon like me to do a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race instead of a triathlon. If I didn't want to do a triathlon, Liren, I know you're an excellent swimmer. I'm still working through that. I've been taking lessons, but I'm not quite there to do a triathlon. So Mike was like, well, instead of doing a triathlon, why don't you do a Spartan race? I'm like, that doesn't sound like much of a come down on there. But our members do a lot of interesting things.
They do.
A lot more than most might think. But hey, that's why we try to get the word out there so they can hear things. So I got one more question for you, though, for just a thought experiment that you are essentially King Liren. King Liren in charge of everything. So if you had that kind of power with unlimited resources, no time constraints, no nothing, but it's it's not necessarily the entire world as much as the accounting profession. But if you could do anything with unlimited power, unlimited resources within the accounting profession, what would you do? What do you think you'd tackle or take care of?
That's an easy one because we talked about this earlier.
Uh-huh.
We continue to struggle with the aging CPA population and the insufficient numbers of college graduates entering our profession. So if I had a magic wand, all accounting students in New York colleges and universities will magically and immediately become members of the State Society.
Oh, there we go. I love that one. Here's the good news about what you just said. You don't even need a magic wand for that one. All they have to do is fill out the application, a very short application, because it's free. Now, I will admit, I didn't know this question. I didn't know that answer was coming. I had a lot of other guesses in my mind, but I love this one because there's nothing that stops any of our students from joining. You don't have to even be an accounting major to join. All you have to do is say you want to be a member, and we got you.
No, absolutely. And during my speech last year, 2023 annual meeting dinner, I presented some statistics about 2023. There were 7,598 accounting degrees that were awarded to 105 New York State colleges, covering all the programs from the 2 years to master's degrees. So my calculation is if approximately 7,600 accounting degrees are being awarded each year, that would be over 20,000 students in total are majoring in accounting at these colleges any given year. Now, most accounting students have a vague idea of what our profession is about. But like you said, having them all become members and allowing them access to the resources of the State Society, they're going to receive a preview of what the profession is about. And the initiatives that we have now at the State Society will be transformative, not only for the State Society, but also for the accounting profession. And I've said this before too, and maybe other of your guests have said this, that the State Society is the oldest CPA membership organization in the United States. At some point in the past, it must have been the largest, right? If it's the oldest, it's the first one at some point, right?
For at least 1 year, right?
At least 1 year, right? So it is still one of the largest membership organizations. And I think under your leadership, Calvin, I look forward to the day when it will once again be the largest in the nation.
I will take on that challenge. Well, you and I have had this conversation a few times.
Yes.
And
yes.
I will say with much love and respect to my colleagues around the country, there is certainly very little reason why New York can't be in that number one spot. And we do it in a friendly way but I think any growth within any of our societies is good for the profession.
Right.
In the case of our membership for students, it is absolutely free, complimentary. High schools, college, no cost at all. At the risk of throwing the goal number even higher, it's worth noting New York happens to be one of those states, and there's certainly a few others, more than a few others, I'd say, around the country, to where even if you think about the population of people who may be interested, it's actually beyond our borders. Certainly our colleagues right across the Hudson in New Jersey or Pennsylvania, which has the largest line, but those two are states like New York, where people often start their life one place and end up another. I'm admittedly an example of that. Someone who began his career in another state and then migrated to New York. So I think that's a fair challenge. Challenge accepted. And part of our focus, of course, will be on those students, because that's a really helpful thing for our pipeline and moving things forward. So, all right. So your thought experiment went in a completely different direction than what I was personally predicting. But I like where you landed even better, because it ends up being the first realistically actionable answer that we've gotten. Or I shouldn't say that. That's not true, because a few of them actually were actionable. But I'll say it's the first immediately actionable one, because we've already got everything set up for what you said in terms of the students. And I would imagine, particularly with your alma mater, Baruch being certainly one of the stronger schools in New York, there's clearly a path to us increasing our student memberships a great deal. So now, I said I had one more question, Liren, but a moment ago, but I was wrong. I actually did have. This is actually truly the last question, but it's the question I like to ask everyone, and it's really more of the, what did we miss? What's one more question that you wish I had asked you that I didn't?
So throughout our discussion today, I believe we've touched upon all the key questions. For me, my focus has been, and you've seen that during my presidency, it's the students. It's the students. And what we did at the very end, I thought will have amazing returns. The fact that the first year member, as soon as they graduate and they're working, that is being free. That is going to be an amazing opportunity for the state society. But if there was one question to be asked, I might want to ask you a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see where we go. This is the first, so let's see where let's see where we go.
So the question will be, as the CEO of our state society, under your leadership, what would our state society look like, say, 5 years from now?
Oh, that's a great one, All right. I really like this question. Okay. So my thought experiment, thinking 5 years out. Okay, so a few things immediately come to mind. That the membership numbers, while robust and still one of the largest, it would actually be at least double what it is now. Partially due to student activity, part of the things that are happening, frankly, around the country, including here in New York, and related to pipeline focus. So first, we would have that greater reach. The other thing I see is that despite public accounting obviously being the bedrock of the credential, you're managing director of a large accounting firm. I began my career in public accounting. That said, many of our members and many other CPAs end up in places other than accounting. So I also see us expanding our outreach to also work with non-public accounting organizations, whether it's ones focused on CEOs, or particularly in a place like New York, partnering up a little bit more with our colleagues in banking and law. So I think that would deepen our feel as well. The last thing I see ends up being more broad, because it happens to a degree. I have it in my vision that it's actually something automatic, that NYCPA would be the go-to place when it comes to any sort of question related to business, finance, and accounting. We get requests for interviews all the time, so I'm certainly not saying that doesn't happen. It happens all the time. But I'd love for it to be in a place to where it's like automatic, to where a person has to say, oh gosh, did we ask the CPAs what they think? So much of it is on that. Now, you notice, oddly enough, despite us both being CPAs, I didn't say anything about financials, but because I think when those sort of things happen, you've got a financially healthy organization. Of course, you have to do the things behind the scenes to make sure it's tight. But I think when you show the value and you create the value, you create a situation where people are afraid to not be a member because they'll miss something, then everything else follows from that. So my vision in 5 years from now would be large organization, at least twice as big as it is now, with deeper connections, not leaving public accounting behind by any stretch, but deeper connections in non-public accounting to make sure they feel part of the tent, and leaning even heavier into the student population, which I think would help alleviate part of the challenge on the demographics and the aging of the profession. The good news on those 5 is I see all of them as doable, admittedly aggressive in a few cases, but they're all doable partially because of the things we're doing now. I think we're really setting ourselves up well for that sort of success. And, you've heard me say this a bunch of times, and I just still believe it's true. I truly do believe this is the best time to be in the accounting profession. And that's not to say that people who are worried about pipeline or worried about this are wrong. They're right. There are a lot of things to worry about. But what I'm saying is, despite all the things to worry about, it's still a great time to be in the profession. If we stick with it and actually act, I think, the 5-year goal we'd have in New York, it would be similar 5-year goals you see at all the places around the country. I just think it's a great time. All right, Liren, you won because that was the first time that someone did that. So I'll have to make sure I'm better prepared for an answer next time, because I didn't see that one coming. But it was a good. I enjoyed being able to talk about where I see things.
Thank you, Calvin.
Absolutely, Liren. It's been such a pleasure talking with you as always.
Absolutely.
I feel obliged to mention that even beyond your leadership as president of the board or immediate past president, that your support of the organization goes well beyond the leadership. It certainly goes into the financial as well. And you honestly have set the bar for what someone should be doing as an active member and an engaged member. We literally were talking about you just the other night about it. Ears probably were burning because it was all good. But Liren, again, it's such a pleasure talking with you as always. And thank you for joining us today on the Trust Professional Podcast.
Thank you, Calvin. Pleasure to be here. Have a good weekend.
Hey, all good.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed our interview with Liren. As you no doubt noticed, beyond his remarkable career, Liren has an amazing story that didn't start in the accounting profession. Turns out that seems to be a consistent through line with so many of our podcast guests. But I'm certainly glad he's with us here as a leader in New York and beyond. I can tell you from personal experience that it was and continues to be a pleasure working with him as CEO. Thanks for joining us on the Trust Professional Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe now to get this podcast delivered to you when it's released. And of course, please do rate and review our podcast, as it helps us continue bringing episodes to you. In addition, if you aren't a current member of NYCPA, I ask you to join us and learn more about our events and activities at nysscpa.org and follow us on various social media. Lastly, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, including possible interviews, please email us at podcast@nysscpa.org. Thanks for listening.